So what we're going to be talking about is William Bullard. He took pictures basically from 1894 to 1918, supposedly, when he died. He died by his own hand. He died at 41 years old in North Brookfield. He was despondent. He couldn't take pictures after 1917 for whatever reason, just going by the newspaper article. I don't know what happened to him. His mother, who he lived with his whole life in Worcester and then in North Brookfield, died 3 weeks before, and he was despondent and died. And his brothers found him in a field which today or recently would have been the right where Bayberry Lanes is in East Brookfield, right where the golf course was. They found him there in the woods. It was woods at the time. And he lived nearby in North Brookfield, just up the road. So we're going to be talking about him tonight. You'll notice it says 1897. That's because the pictures that I'm going to show you, the earliest one is 1897 in Worcester. His last pictures in 1917 that I can date were at Green Hill Park. But this man right up here is buried at Hope Cemetery. That's William Ward. Rather dapper individual. That is a bicycle riding outfit, believe it or not. He has a cousin who has one just like that, only he's got things in his pocket that he's delivering. He was a courier. And he had a special bicycle. And this man worked at Harrington Richardson. And we're going to go through. He's significant. Bullard is significant because he took pictures at this time period. The Great Migration that they always talk about, the black migration from the South, did not start really about till 1916, about the time he was winding up. So these pictures are much more rare in that wasn't a focus of anybody at the time he was taking them. Blacks were leaving the Jim Crow South as Reconstruction ended in 1877, and the blacks then had to deal with all the new laws they made to discriminate against them. So they slowly moved north, and they really started to move north in 1916, and it ended about 1970. And that was about 6 million people from 1916, blacks, to the South, Midwest, some to the West. This is him. He looks rather happy, sitting on a rock. That's in North Brookfield. That's his home behind there. It is now gone. Finally, it fell down about 7-8 years ago on Bullard Road, named after the family. You can see that he had about 6 houses. And I have all of them. I have every negative he ever took. And this is him in the top right. That's at that home right there. And that would be his mother on the right, his grandmother in the middle, his brother and sister-in-law and the little baby. I was lucky enough to get a hold of the 2 children, 2 women of that boy. I was able to speak with them. And they knew they had an Uncle Bill, but they were in their 80s, they were born long after. They didn't even know he was a photographer. So they were quite surprised. I sent some negatives, some pictures to them to show them. And they verified some of the pictures inside the house that you'll see, because they had been there. And he was ahead of his time. People just didn't do this then. He either set the camera or he's got a mechanical thing with his other hand. It could be either one. But you look at his shoes, he did some walking. These shoes were made for walking, as Nancy Sinatra would say. And this is a great picture of Bill. I always like that one. He looks great. It's taken in 1902. He's got a sharpshooter medal on. He's got a good conduct medal on the right. He's looking good. The only flaw in the ointment is he never served in the military. So that's a little difficult. And believe me, I've checked. His brother did. That's probably his brother's uniform. He took lots of pictures of his brother at Camp Framingham. And that's where he lived in Worcester. That's still standing. Took me a while to find it. He lived on the first floor here. And believe it or not, through research and a professor down from the University of Virginia who has looked at these photographs, and he's black, he specialized in black photography, he sent me an email one day and he said, "What do you know about George Morrill?" My last name is Morrill. Spelled the same. I said, "Nothing." Why? I said, "I had a cousin." But he said, "No, he lived upstairs." And I said, "Well, wait a minute, that's too much of a coincidence." And he was a photographer. So I then changed gears, started researching George Morrill. He moved from here to Fitchburg, became a 32-year photographer there. 12 people worked for him. He was a big deal there. And they have none of his negatives. No one ever heard of Bullard, and I have all 6,000. They don't have a single negative of his. And I have pictures of, they didn't have a picture of him. he took a picture of George. I gave him the picture. Wow. Yeah, this is inside that house. Right over here, you see his camera bag. He was a Where's Waldo with the camera bag. He stuck it everywhere. You'd see it in a snowbank, be behind kids when he's taking pictures, school pictures.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool.
Be in the street. It was hanging off a bicycle of soldiers in Camp Framingham. He just put it everywhere. And the home is still there. They let me in. I spoke with a Dominican couple who own it now. I was able to go in, and that's also a picture in there. I don't know who the lady is, but that is the stove. And I was able to take it from this picture. Then he took some more coming around the corner. What you do is wait a minute, that picture's in the other picture. I know this picture, so now I know this picture. So this is his two brothers. And again, that's around the corner. Everything's the same there. Sliding doors when I walked in, high ceilings. It's wallpaper different, but the home is still the same. And this is the area that he lived in then. This was around the corner from his house, and you say, where is that? That's right here. Oh. CVS. You see the difference? Slight difference. Right there is Harrington Richardson. Right there. Next to it is, right here is Worcester Slipper. And right next to that, further down from Boston Donuts towards National Glass, was a company called Hill Dryer Company. Those of you who are old enough, and I see some in here, in the back of a three-decker, they would have this bar coming down, and then it had string coming out like a Y. You hang your clothes on it and turn it out. The biggest company that manufactured those in the entire world was right there on that street. It's gone. It was right about here. And then this was the Worcester Slipper. They made fur felt slippers, special slippers, and then Harrington Richardson was a gun manufacturing. My dad worked there in World War II. Okay, now it's a Walgreens, you know. Gun manufacturing, Walgreens. So you got that. Now this right here, this is May Street headed towards Worcester State right here. So this is Park Ave. You can tell by the trolleys. If I didn't know where it was, I could tell you it's a main drag. It's Main Street, it's Park Ave, it's West Boylston Street, just by the fact it's got two sets of trolley tracks. And they're cobblestoned around it. So you learn that after a while. This is going up to Worcester State. If you're right about where I am up here, go right up here, turn left. Second house in is where he lived. Still there. This is all, of course, parking lot for this. That house, and that house were in that last picture. They're still there. You see them. They're still there. You could get a peek at them. That one, and that one. These three are gone. And again, those pictures you're looking at, they're around 1903, 1904. This is his home in North Brookfield. He lived there from 1908 until he took his own life in 1918. That's his grandmother cooking breakfast. Took me a while to figure that one out, and then I started putting them together. That's his study. And right there is a stuffed bear. Wow. A little teddy bear. That'd be worth a lot of money today. And these negatives, you can't see it here, but if you had the negative in front of you and put it like I do on my computer, or I put it on a light board, they're so clear after 120, almost 130 years for some. They're so clear and sharp even today that I can read all of this. I can read all of those labels on it. Just blow it up, I can read them all. These right here are volume 1 through 4 history books here. 1 volume here and 3 here. The first one's slightly different. And you can read all of that. If you look at this picture right here, this is his picture of his house that he's living in.
Oh, I see it. Oh, yeah.
See, put it on the wall. And so those kinds of things give you a clue. This right here is the Soldiers Monument back at the Commons, City Hall in Worcester. And he took these pictures and he just put them on the wall. Frame them up, put them on the wall. Now, that's their living room, looking into the kitchen. I was able to blow this up. I put it in Adobe and I can make this darker. That's a calendar. But there's enough detail there, even though you can't see it until you darken it, that I read that. That one right there is 1911. That's a calendar for a coal company in North Brookfield. And the date's right on it. So you can play with these quite a bit. This picture here, they took that from Worcester. That picture was on the wall. Yeah, that picture. So this one is unique. This, he took a picture. You can see him here. But he's not in it. There's been an argument by many people. No, he's in there, but he's like this. He's not in there. And that's my proof. He's not in there. And we went over that. Many people still look at that and they say, well, he's turned to the side. No, he's not in there. So we get to the research questions. This is what I had to come up with. And so the first question was, how did he acquire this skill? I went crazy trying to figure out every way we could look. We could not find he went anywhere. We think he learned it on his own. The big photographer was E.B. Luce, Edwin Luce in Worcester. Huge at that time. Had lots of people working for him. Never worked for him. We looked at employment slips. We've gone to camera clubs. He belonged to nothing. He learned on his own. And he's been told, these pictures have been shown over the past several years to photography experts from the AAS, black photography experts. They all, Worcester Art Museum, I had an exhibit there. They come to the conclusion that he is incredibly skilled, especially for a man who had to do it on his own. The pictures are phenomenal. Why did he take such a strong interest in the black community? That's a great question. I'd ask him that question. Because 40% of all the pictures he took of people in that neighborhood of Worcester, all through Worcester, 40% are of blacks. The population was 1%. There's a reason for that. And he took them, he didn't have a studio. He never had a studio. He took them in his home. He did. Luckily, and you'll see it coming up, he left his logbook. It's an old account book. And he ripped out the beginning pages that belonged to his father, and he started writing down who these people were, and he numbered the back of the negative. So he took a pin, and if he scratched 1 in the back of the negative, in the book he wrote 1, who it was. And you can't imagine. He did that to 900 of them, of the 6,000. And it was more than beneficial to me. And he sell them, to get on that, he mentioned in there 15 cents. The most expensive one he sold was 75 cents. It was a 5x7 negative, so the picture, but it doesn't say how many. Did he make 2 of them, 3 of them? 75 cents.
What was that then?
Yeah, that would be a lot. That'd be expensive, yeah, at that time. He sold some for 15. What inspired him to travel to so many communities? He traveled to 45 communities. He did this walking. We saw his shoes. And this is heavy equipment. Glass negative, very heavy. You carry many of those. And he would travel by wagon. He traveled by bicycle. He traveled by trolley, by train when he went to Buffalo, New York. Took pictures almost everywhere. And this is just a sample of his travels. He started, his very first picture, which I have, is of a steamer in Newport, Rhode Island. Very first picture he took. He's 18 years old. And then he took Worcester and East Brookfield. You can see, go down the line, a lot of camps. Camp Framingham, Camp Bridgewater, Camp Westfield, Camp Middlefield. And I kind of laugh at Camp Middlefield. I had this box of negatives, and on it he wrote Camp Middlefield. And I said, oh, Middlefield. So look it up. It's out in the Western Mass. I head towards Northampton. And so I said to my wife, who was sitting in the back corner over there, we've got to go look at that. I want to see where that camp was. So I opened the box, and I look, and there's no soldiers. It's a house, it's a barn, it's a railroad station, it's a library. Don't know why he labeled it Camp Middlefield. So we drove out there. We knocked on a door of this big home, and we got talking with the guy who knew the area. He said, no, there's never been a camp here. They've never had a training camp here. And he knew the history of it. And I said, but I have a picture of your house 120 years ago. And he was a little surprised by that. He took pictures of the homes, but there was no camp there. Everything else was camps. Every time it said camp, it was soldiers. Like Camp Framingham, there's probably 10 boxes of them. He was extremely talented with many interests. For example, he took 50 pictures of trolleys, with trolleys in them. He took 150 trains and train depots. I mean, it's time. You've got to set up a giant camera, take the picture, hope it comes out right, put the glass back in, take it back home, develop it, and his negatives are fantastic, even today. He was obsessed with ice and harvesting on the ponds. He really covered Worcester. Now, Worcester had 3 big areas where they took ice from. Coe's Pond, Indian Lake, which was then called North Lake, up towards, you headed up towards Holden. And the other one was, and this shocked me, It was right near Worcester Tech, Institute Lake, the little park right across from Worcester Tech. That had a giant Walker Ice facility on it. Walker Ice was the granddaddy of all. They had 92 ice wagons that delivered the whole area. You know, horse and buggy, closed-in wagon. And he took a picture of every single one. I have a negative of every one because the number's on the side. With ice, delivering ice, handing it in a window at a 3-decker. He was just crazy inside the ice houses, which had walls 3 feet thick. And they had a moving conveyor belt, so they bring the ice up and they put it on a conveyor belt and bring it in, and now it's here. And then the conveyor belt kept getting higher till it was, some of them were about 25 feet high. So what you ended up having is a giant block of ice, 50 by 25 feet high, 50 by 50. And of course it lasted till August. It was huge. He also took 800 plus soldiers in training. Those are some of them are unbelievable. Joking, laughing, pyramids of soldiers, cooks. He's got a cook hat on several of them. He puts a hat on, he puts a uniform on. You'll see guys kneeling down as if they're firing. They're using sticks, like branches. They're firing branches. You see several of them with bicycles, with the rifle strapped to the side of a bicycle. I mean, he took everything. They're really great shots. Next time I do one for your society, I'm going to do more soldiers and show you some of those. And this is the part that has made him famous. This collection, we've done the research. Because we know who they are, almost all of them, there are some we don't. There isn't another one like it in the whole United States. There are much bigger black collections, but they don't know who they are, and they're in a studio. These are taken at their homes, which makes it incredible. I did not know that. I owned these 10 years before I knew that. You'll hear that story coming up. Yeah, this is kind of neat. He was a school photographer, and he took, you know, in many different places. And this is how we've preserved them. You can see over there, that should say 130 years. They've stayed together 130 years. I've had them 21 years now. And it's quite a collection. Here's how we discovered the black section that I'm on. And that's my granddaughter, and that's me in the background, actually. This is an exhibit at the Worcester Art Museum, and she was taking pictures of the exhibit. We were working on a book on Worcester, and I gave her some negatives to look at, and I just said, well, I'll go in there in the boxes at the time. I was just starting to work on putting them away. So I took a couple of boxes of streets and I put them down. And I wanted her to have the experience. She was 10. And I wanted her to have the experience of handling and looking at it. And I said, if you can read a sign or a side of a building, we can find that through a directory, like Joe's Hardware. That we can find. We'll look it up in the directory and we'll know where it was. And so she turned to me, sitting downstairs in the cellar at my house, and she said, what's this a negative of? And it was a heavy-set black lady. And I said that. I said, that shouldn't be in streets. So I grabbed it. We put it aside, and it stayed there for months. We began our second book, this book on Charlton. The other book was published, and she chastised me. It's still here. You tell me to put stuff away. It's still sitting on your desk. So she picked it up, thank God. And she's looking at it, and she turned it over. In the back, the front's glass, and the back is emulsion, the gooey stuff that makes the picture. And she said, why does this have a 76 on it? So I said, let me see that. And I, to this day, can't see it. I have to get a jeweler's loupe up, but her eyes picked it up. I said, I don't know. So I'd say a couple hours, I was trying to remember back, went by and working on other things. And I thought, wait a minute. When I got those, there was a book with them and some other papers, autograph book. So I went to get the book, I opened it up, numbers. I never looked at it before, I didn't see it. And we put it together, and I started finding more blacks. I started now going to the portraits. I never looked at the thing, when it would say portrait, I wouldn't bother to look at it because there's people, you know. I want buildings, I want trains, and then I started going through the portraits. It took untold hours. And this is where we ended up with a full exhibit for 4 months at the Worcester Art Museum. And it gave me my 15 minutes of fame, almost 16. I got almost 16 minutes. It went international. Some of the pictures went to embassies overseas. It was in the London Daily Mail. It was in the Washington Post, the Boston Globe. You know, everywhere. TV, I got to go on TV with my granddaughter. It was pretty cool. So
did you ID number 76 for Hannah?
I did. It was that lady right there.
Awesome.
Celia Perkins. She's buried at Hope Cemetery, way up in the back. We found her grave, her and her husband. She was indeed born a slave. Not only did we ID her, she was born a slave. Her original name, she married a Perkins. That's a big family in who he took. Took 32 Perkins people, but she married into the family. She was a Boykin. So she lived on the James Chestnut Plantation, the Mulberry Plantation in Camden. She's on the Slave Manifest, which we've seen and I have a copy of. Her father-in-law, her husband's, we're going to see a picture. Her father-in-law, I mean, he was really a father because he had 23 children. And I have a few of them in pictures, big family. And he lived just past 1900, and he lived until 1912. He was 110 when he died.
What state was that?
South Carolina, Camden, South Carolina.
You said the name Chestnut, as in Mary Chestnut.
You know that.
Well, we talked about
Mary Boykin Chestnut was her name. She took the Boykin. Mary Boykin Chestnut was the wife of James Chestnut, who was the highest ranking aide to Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy. Before he quit his job to take that job, he was United States Senator James Chestnut. He owned 500 slaves. He was a really big deal. He lost everything. She ended up owning a piece of her own plantation that she was born on. And then till 77. By 1979, she's in Worcester because a sheriff's sale, of course, Jim Crow comes in. Blacks now, they make laws to make sure that they can't keep the land that they ended up getting a piece of. And so she moved to Worcester with her husband. That's a copy of the, you can't see it clearly because it's through plastic. They had built it into the wall because that's the actual book, which is, you know, a treasure. That's the actual book, and you turn the pages. That's what a page looks like, right there. Copies of the page, and you can see the, you know, the numbers. They go with it, and you would find this George Ward right here was, you see the guy that started with, the dapper individual? This is his cousin. He's a little baby at the time. See? Baby. Yeah? And he would tell you, Patsy Perkins, great pictures of Patsy. That's also a first cousin of the guy you saw. Abbott Street, Tough Street. Tough Street, this street right here, this one doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. So if you were to drive on Park Ave in Worcester and you go up to where Winfield Street, because Boston Donuts is on your left, across the street there's a street that goes off at an angle, it's one way, Winfield Street. Park on Winfield Street and turn around. You'll see that it's at an angle. It keeps going right across Park Ave. You can see it's still there, even though it's been gone for over 60 years. You can see it because otherwise you wouldn't have streetlights out in the middle of that field with all the weeds and everything. Still there, Tough Street. All the homes are gone. They took out the entire neighborhood, more than 50 homes, because they were going to enlarge Harrington Richardson and Copus Engineering, and they did not. They took them all out, except for one. One guy wouldn't sell, still there. And everyone else sold, and then they said, yeah, never mind. We're going to go to Millbury instead. So they built in Millbury. Yeah, it was a shame. These are the sitters and descendants. The woman on the right, remember I said the woman lived to be 104. She was born a slave, Bethany Veeney. That's her granddaughter on the, well, it's both her granddaughters. But the woman on the right, the granddaughter on the right, I'm friendly with her granddaughter. She's in her 70s, a little bit younger than me. She's going to be doing a presentation with me at Quinsigamond on the 21st of February. She'll be there to do a talk that afternoon. And it's quite something. Of course, it's her, the older lady's her great-great-grandmother, and this is her grandmother. She was so thrilled to see that. She had never seen the picture. This is her mother. This is, the lady on the left has spoken here once. That's Dr. Jeanette Greenwood from Clark. She retired. She was my partner in crime. She knows so much about this. She had written a book on the migration of blacks. At the period I have these pictures from the South. She spent 9 years on the book. And all the people that she studied, she didn't know pictures existed. So when I contacted her and said, I have this name, this name, this name, she came out to my house and she stopped working on what she was working on and spent the time with me on this until she retired, because it was all the people she had researched. And there you can see she's showing that lady right there, that lady is the darker of the two on the right, that's her daughter. She didn't quite see the exhibit. Oh, Laura Pearson, she was so great, 94. I just enjoyed her. She was what I call a feisty old lady. I would go to the senior center, I love this, she was great. And she would be running the meeting for the elderly group that met at the senior center. And she said, I'm trying to speak here, let's have it quiet. I said, she must have taught school. She was great, she was great. I really liked her a lot. And that book, that Bible she's got in her arm had been passed down from that lady that was born a slave. And so she took it out to show us. So we got to know, and that's the lady, this is her daughter, the granddaughter of the little girl. This is Bonetta, and she's a friend of my wife and I, and she's just wonderful. This lady here, this is at Clark University, to show you what had happened. This is the book here that came with the exhibit. You could purchase that with the exhibit. And this lady came up to Clark to speak, Deborah Willis, Dr. Deborah Willis. She is the preeminent or leading authority in the United States on black history photography. And she came up to talk on these pictures at Clark. And she's about this very little, she's just wonderful, just really friendly. I enjoyed that. And she has 28 books on the subject that she's published. So she's a pretty serious lady. I'll give you an example. This is a great picture. We thought that this might be here, somewhere near Elm Park. It's not. So we don't know where that is, but we know who it is because he identified them. And this boy's grandchildren are right there. We got to know them. And Nick and Larry Schuyler, there they are with the picture. I got to walk around with Nick on the right. He's probably in mid-70s, I'd say now. And we did an NPR walk around the neighborhood. So I had the photos, and I would talk the factual history of the photos to this on this 2-hour NPR thing we did. And he would say, yeah, well, when I was a kid, I climbed that tree. There used to be a tree in the back there. He told the story of getting caught up in a tree. Everybody else ran. A lady come out, she's going to get them. They're up in her apple tree, a pear tree. And he said, I'm up at the top of the tree hiding. She didn't see me. And he said, I had to wait quite a while till it all died down, but all my friends got caught. They were down to the bottom of the tree because I was throwing them the pears. I mean, it's fun to hear those stories, you know. And he's telling a story, and of course the NPR reporter, she's loving this. I remember when she said to me, do you have a picture of that tree? I said, you're pushing your luck now. And that's his family. Wow. And all different shades, as you can see, that's the family. This is Nick and Larry right here. And the reason they're standing there is because that's at the museum, that's at the exhibit, and their family pictures from 100 years before that are on the wall behind them. This is the Johnson family. They were, both the husband and wife were 1/4 Nipmuc. And he died shortly after the picture was taken. They went on. He must have known them better because he took so many pictures. And you can see, he traveled a lot. Look at his backdrop. Nicely ironed, perfectly neat. And he didn't bother to just crop it. He'd have backdrops. I mean, these pictures are so unique. That's them. That picture was taken on Tough Street, that street that's no longer there. And what I did here was show you the entire negative. You can see the edges. I didn't crop it, so you can see just what he actually saw. This is John Street Church, still there. That was mostly black at the time, but it was mixed. It doesn't look too much different today than that. The houses are different. This house up here is still standing. That's the only one. The rest around it have been replaced, the 3-deckers. But it's still there. Across the street from it is a community school, straight right here where I'm standing. And so it's changed a bit in that regard. It's up in the Ashland Street area. It's up, a little further up, off of Pleasant in that back area. And one thing that was noted, when the blacks moved here, in the 70s, 80s, and right around 2000, they moved here, here meaning this area in Worcester. When they did, they found an area that wasn't integrated completely but it wasn't segregated completely. So they didn't do too badly. They could go to the schools, but surely they were discriminated against. They were discriminated against in the workforce. That gentleman you saw in the beginning standing there, Dapper William, he worked at Harrington Richardson. He was the only black in the entire building. That's a big workforce. There were black churches. There were also things like, if you had the Elks, you had a black Elks. If you had different groups, social groups, they wouldn't let the blacks in. Right. There was a ceiling. There was an economic ceiling to the blacks. So women were going to be they're going to be doing ironing or domestic work. They might be doing some kind of office work, cleaning, but they're not going to be sitting behind the desk. And men didn't, it was the same thing. There was that ceiling. It was better here than in the South, obviously, but it was still difficult. And that's their church. The last one was a little fancier. This is a totally black church. This is in Beaverbrook. As you're driving down Park Ave, you got May Street going across. Go a little further, there used to be a Benson and Wood and Martin Tire. This is exactly where Martin Tire is today. So it's almost across the street from National Glass. That's where this stood. And you see it says Bethel AME Church. That's African Methodist Episcopal Church. This is the pastor to that church that I just showed you. He lived right around the corner on Parker Street. It's now a factory. He lived at 13 Parker Street. He had 2 more children after that, smaller. This is a great story because it shows you a little bit of citizenship and people serving their country. This is Reuben Griffin. He served in Company L of the 6th Regiment in 1898, 1899, and 1900. So you can see when this picture was taken. The thought from the people that have come, the black experts from Virginia and from New York, I said, who came up, the writers, they believe, they did a whole program on him because he took so many pictures of him, even inside his house. He believes he was very comfortable. He said, any other soldier would be standing like this, blacks wanted to be so proud. He said he was very comfortable. He must have been friendly with the photographer because he was so comfortable. Another one, he's sitting in a house whittling in uniform. Very unusual. And he said, of course, much deeper than I would go into these things, that was his specialty. He said to see him leaning against the tree, I have another one with him sitting against the tree. He said trees at that time in the South were used to hang blacks. And so he's looking at the juxtaposition of the whole thing, looking at that. That was his thoughts. But he served in Company L, which was a black company. We not only didn't integrate fully, we didn't integrate in World War I. Never mind the Spanish-American War. We didn't integrate the services in World War II. It wasn't until presidential article 9981, September 26, 1948. Congress wouldn't do it. President Truman said, I'm doing it. Executive Order 9981 in July of 1948. I was living then. To think that at the first 4 years of my life, blacks couldn't serve with whites in the military. They could die, no problem dying, but you couldn't serve. This is my wife's favorite here. His great-grandson, we got to know. He's 90. We just were in Washington, D.C. He's in Maryland visiting for his 90th birthday. He was a renowned musician, played for white people. He was so well known. Big article in the paper when he died. His daughter was also in plays and a musician. His daughter's grandson was a guy named Raymond Jackson. And this is how important that guy was. Look at David Thompson Oswell. He is buried at Hope Cemetery. Also, he died in 1902, born in 1834. And you can see his daughter is in one of the things here. When he died in 1902, Bullard knew this family because he took all the flowers, took lots of pictures. He must have known the family. See that broken string right there? That means that he died. This is made in the shape of a harp with flowers with a broken string signifying the death of a musician. That's him. This is Raymond Jackson, world-class concert pianist, played Carnegie Hall at 13 years old. That's in his home. I took that picture. We were just there in December at his home. This is further back. This is back 4 years ago. He's not doing well now. He's not well at his age. Yet when he sits at the piano, somehow it's all there. That's a 9-foot Steinway. And just to tell you a little humorous story about that, when we were first there, Jeanette and I went to visit him, and we wanted to interview him. He didn't know, he idolized the man you saw with the viola, but he never knew that a picture of him existed. He was 83 years old before he first saw a picture, 83, before he first saw a picture of his great-grandfather. He put flowers on his grave. Now my wife and I put flowers on the grave and send him a picture of the flowers so he can know that he's taken care of. We were listening, he said, "Would you like me to play something for you?" To Jeanette and I. I'm thinking, are you kidding? I think I'd like that. She said, "Why don't you lay under the piano?" I like to do that. And he played Rachmaninoff for us at the time, which is really pounding, as we laid under the piano. And then this last time we visited, he played, and my wife got to lay under the piano. And we stayed over with them. They're just wonderful people. Wonderful. We've gotten to know them and count them as friends. All of that makes all the research worth it. This is at the Worcester Art Museum. He's playing over there. They came up to play for nothing at the opening because they're descendants. He's the great-grandson. This is the great-great-great-granddaughter through the other daughter. And she is now at the New England Conservatory in Boston. I just was talking to her online the other day, waiting to say. She's a violin, like, wow, just off the charts. So, as my wife would say, it's in the genes. The musical is just incredible. So, she got done playing. We went up the steps and up into where my exhibit was. And we get almost to it, and I'm with my son and I'm with Steve, and we hear the piano, and I said, I thought Raymond was going to leave, he's with his wife. He's playing again, let's go see what he's playing. So we got to the top of the steps, and we looked down, she was playing. And I said, my son looked at her, she was playing the piano, and he was telling her stuff. They've remained friendly since they met. They didn't know each other until they met here. And it was incredible. So we looked down, and my son I still remember, he looks down at her playing the piano. She is. And he goes, Dad, she was 14. That's just not right. That is just not right. And she was so good.
What year was your exhibit at the museum?
That was October 2017 to February 2018. Yep. Now, these guys were interesting because, of course, they're little people. Yep. And you can see when they were born, people knew them. Bonetta, the one I told you about who had been here, she knew them. We talked to people and said, "Oh, I know her. She was my babysitter. She didn't take any crap either, I'll tell you that. She was tough." That's how they would talk. They were really tough. And they lived on Mason Street until 1994. So I could have known them. I could have known her. Those are really, really rare pictures right there. That's on Mason Street. And this is Rose. Remember I said 23 children? This is 3 of those 23. And this lady ended up, she was not born in slavery. She was born just after the 13th Amendment, 65. Her older brothers of the 23 were born into slavery. And she ended up in Worcester owning a home over behind Boston Donuts. One of the homes that got taken down was hers. Of course, she died in 1950. It's quite an interesting story, just reading some of the things that she wrote. This is Kim Perkins Hampton. She is of this man here, she is the great-great-great-great-granddaughter. And one of the great moments for me at the exhibit, when she came over to me with her daughter, she has twin daughters, 3 daughters, and she came over to me and she introduced me to the daughter, and she said, "This is the man who gave us a history." They had no history. They now have 32 pictures of their family. They didn't know they existed. They not only didn't have the pictures, they didn't have the information. They didn't know who they were at that time. So this gentleman right here, this is Howard Beckton. He was a football player. I recognized that when I looked at this. I said, that's a Bullard picture, that he took a picture of his picture. And I said, that looks like a football jersey. This is the Bancroft Athletic Club, took some wine. We found the newspaper article that talked about how he died suddenly from appendicitis. And the Bancroft people, I've got other pictures of his funeral, sent a flower in the shape of a football. There it is, it's a football player. I got his whole family. He took pictures of his whole family. That's Howard back then. The guy on the left is very interesting, Alonzo. He went by the nickname Son Shannon from Worcester. He died at 20, almost 22, a star athlete. But where he went to school was amazing. He was at Amherst College out in Amherst, an extremely difficult and selective college to get into. Had he died in his junior year, the president of the college gave the eulogy, that's how well known he was. Had he lived to graduate, he would have been the first to graduate there by 14 years before the first black actually did. He was 14 years ahead. The guy on the left is Bud Ward. This is his dad. We're not talking great anything. That guy on the left, who in that picture is 89, he's now passed away at 94. That man right there, this is his dad. He's buried, also I dug his grave, he was buried in the ground, it took me a while to find it. He had a flat one, down 6 inches, but I did find it and clean it. This is, that's his dad. Well, what's famous is, again, he's going to be not born a slave. He was born in 1900, so he's one in that picture. That's a 1901 shot. But what was great about that is he had nothing. He died at 32 years old, so he was only 7. He didn't get to know him, his dad. So I have several pictures of him and the brothers. When I spoke with him in D.C. where he was living. That's his son, who wasn't living there, who I've gotten to know, and that's his wife, Eula, who is still living. She's 96. He went to North High School in Worcester, won a state championship in basketball, did really great, and then went into service. But all he could do in the service, in the Navy, was be a cook. He wanted to be an engineer. So he got in a word battle with the commander of the ship. They left him in Alaska in the Aleutian Islands. Said, no, you're going to cook or you can stay here. So he said, I spent 2.5 years playing basketball. That's his words. They wouldn't let him. He resented that. He got out, and the coach, the white coach at Worcester North, then, I think it's a great story, got him into Cornell. From there, he met this guy who he thought was doing a lousy job with his ice cream stands. He wasn't, his little ice cream buildings. He wasn't promoting them right. So he went to see the guy. And he said, I do this. What you're not doing it right. You could grow this. And when he's talking with the guy said, well, you think you can do better? He said, I do. And he hired him. That guy's name was Bill Marriott. And so when he retired, he was executive vice president of Marriott Corporation, the hotel corporation. He was a close friend of the actual Bill Marriott. It's a great story. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to back up with the pictures, but the gentleman that played the piano, Ray, when we were talking with him, he's the sweetest guy. He was telling us about, at the New England Conservatory, he had a classmate. He said, I think you probably know her name, he said, and a friend and a classmate. Her name was Coretta Scott. We would know her as Coretta Scott King. Martin Luther King's wife was his classmate. So I said, did you, history. I said, did you ever meet Martin Luther King? He said, well, when I met him, he was just Martin. he was just a kid, just a young guy, before he became famous. Now, I'm going to show you the Beaverbrook children. We're getting closer to the end here. I've never shown these pictures before. I've dug some out. Integrated school. Now, that school is up in the West Boylston section. There's only 2 schools up there. They were wooden. I don't know which one it is. They both look the same, unfortunately. I have all the schools. He took every school, every fire station, everything. But I don't know which one that is of the 2. This is the Coates baby. That's what he puts. I'm glad he wrote it and he scratched the number, but could you give me just a little bit more? Because the Coates had 9 children, so it's one of them. You just look at these little kids, and you can't help it. This is Minnie Perkins. He took Perkins a lot. Oh, you see the Ward guy I told you, Mr. Dapper in the beginning? That's his daughter. So he puts Ward child, and it was that Ward, and the Davis girl. Now, could I find her? Yes. I haven't. You can't imagine the research it takes, because now I've got to look at the street directory, find out, I do know where that was taken. That was taken on Abbott Street. So then I have to find, well, okay, near Abbott Street, let me go look at all the streets. Was there a Davis family? If there was, did they have a girl? Does she fit? This is a 1904 picture. If she was 12 in 1904, that might be her, or 11 or 10. But if she's 17, that's not her. That's how you research it. Oh, isn't that kid cute, huh? Don't know. And of course, wrinkle-free in the back there, you can see it's perfect. And this one's got flowers on it. He'd have to roll those up. And he never picked up trash either. That was all included. No charge extra for the trash that was on the ground. And these are Eugene Shepard's kid. He took some nice pictures of Eugene Shepard. Eugene Shepard was a part Nipmuc. He also cleaned cars. Cars meaning train cars. That was his job. He has a picture of him inside one of the cars. Now see, I can find this simply because I look at the other pictures of the homes. Now I may not be able to, but I could. And all I have to do is match up the bricks. I got to match up like the hole there or the partial brick here, and you can do it. But that's hours. That's a lot of hours, but I've done it and done it and done it. And don't know. Cute little kid, dressed a little bit long. Try walking around in that one. And this one, look at that. The rocker is so adorable. That's a tough one. It's a fence. There were fences everywhere. There are all that kind of fence. Oh, this kid he took a picture of him. Don't know who it is. I mean, look at that.
He looks so proud.
No, he's looking great. Look at me. And I like this one. He got photobombed up here.
Yeah.
This is what's called a split negative, meaning he would take one negative, cover one side, take the picture. This happened a lot when he was probably traveling, like, wait a minute, I'm running out of glass. And that was one way to do it, is to split the negative. And you can start to see what the steps look like. I don't know where that one is, and I don't know who that is. And I'll probably not live long enough to find some of these. This kid's got an attitude. You took that picture. Come a little closer with that camera there, Bill. Yeah. But that's a great shot. That is I appreciate those kind. And again, you got your picnic basket on the ground and whatever else might be going on. Now, I got to tell you this. I have literally done thousands and thousands of hours of research and study of this. It's become part of me. I appreciate it. I like it. It's done out of love of the subject and the people I've gotten to meet. It's been just a wonderful, wonderful experience. I get to share this. I go over, John has called, and I go over to the Southbridge Historical Society. I put on a presentation. They appreciate it. We get to talk. That's what it's really all about. I'm just offering this as, I used to be a teacher, and I can continue being a teacher. It's kind of nice for me. I'm very grateful. But thousands of hours of research, you know what that led to? Those are the descendants of those pictures. And that's not all of them. It was over 100 descendants. We just got the biggest group we had at one time, we took a picture of. It's just an amazing picture. I mean, that's just so great. That's how you could find many more photos. Just go bullardphotos.org. It's a pleasure to have a group come to listen because they want to hear it. And I thank you for showing up. And when you look at the pictures, I made the pictures. I made the frames. I cut the mats. This is a one-stop operation here. And I enjoy that.